Hello friends, today we are here to discuss about the marketing research process. This particular topic is really pertinent for students of MBA and the PhD scholars and for the early academicians. And this particular topic is important for the reason is that the research is the field which is going to be used by many more people in all across the section of the society itself. If you remember that the Prime Minister Modi recently have talked about the Jai Anusandhan. So if you remember, the initially Sri late Lal Bahadur Shastri has talked about the Jai Jawan Jai Kisan, and the Atal Bihari Vajpayee has added a word that is Jai Vigyan. But recently, Prime Minister in his Mann Ki Baat has added the word that is Jai Anusandhan. So in that particular process, this particular topic I has just built for all the learners who want to pursue in the field of research itself. So let us now begin with this. So first of all, let us understand what are the different steps, what are the different processes that actually involved in this particular process itself. So first one is the problem definition. So basically what you need to do is you need to define the problem. So we will discuss all these problems in detail one by one, but let us try and understand each of the steps. So basically 6 steps are involved into this. One is the problem definition. Second one is the development of an approach to the problem. So how do you approach that particular problem? So after development of that particular problem, how do you approach to that particular problem? The third is the research design formulation. So research design is simply like a script writer of a movie when he writing a script for the movie. So in what sense the script moves on every step of that particular movie itself. So in a similar fashion, marketer also design the research itself, and that we call it as a research design formulation. The fourth one is the field work or the data collection. So how do you conduct that field work? How do you collect the data for your research work itself? That is the fourth step that we'll be discussing. The fifth step is the data preparation and the analysis. So we'll be talking about when we collect the data, how do we gather it? How do we clean the data? And how do we actually record the data into the computers and for the further analysis and the process itself? So that part we will be talking about the data preparation and the analysis. The last part, which is one of the very silent part and many people do not put a lot of emphasis, is the report preparation and the presentation. Please try and understand here we are talking about two aspects. One is the report preparation, the another one is the report presentation, and both are equally important for the market researchers when they are actually presenting their work before the audience itself or before their management itself, whatever. Let us try and understand the first one, that is the problem definition. How do we define the problem? So the first aspect of the problem definition is, first thing first, that we decide what is the purpose of the study. Try to collect some relevant background of that particular study itself. When I am saying relevant background of the study, that simply means, let's assume some company comes up to you with a particular problem, and because the company is not able, the managers of that particular company may not be able to describe that problem before you. What you need to do is you just need to visit that particular company. You need to talk to the people, those who are making the daily decisions in that particular company itself, who are actually facing that particular challenge in their daily life itself. So you need to have that background study, discussion with the decision makers, interviews of the industry experts, those who are working on that particular part, and finally analyze the secondary data that is useful for, or collect some qualitative data as well. Let's say for example the focus group interview you need to undertake. You may have to talk to the management itself. Now once you go through this particular process, you'll be able to find out what is the exact problem that the company is facing, and thereafter at times you also may have to check with the previous records of the company. So how their let's assume if the problem is pertaining to the sales, you also need to understand the trend of that particular sales itself. You might have to undertake some of the interviews, maybe multi-level interview you have to conduct. So using these particular processes, you will be able to understand what is the problem definition, and you will be able to define the problem exactly. Now once you define the problem, now here your journey starts. So let's come to the step number 2. There we talk about the development of an approach to the problem. So basically in this particular case, what we do, we try and see what are the different approaches. So what are the different approaches in journal, in research is available to us. So one very popular method that we know is the inductive and the deductive method of approaching to a particular research problem itself. So one is the inductive approach. So basic difference between the inductive and deductive approaches: in the inductive approach, what we do, we simply talking about a process from a particular specific things to the general problem. So here in this particular process, let me just give you an example and you'll be able to understand what I'm talking about in the inductive approach. Inductive approach simply means, let's assume you went to a shopping mall and there you observe certain things, and based on that observation you develop certain variables, you try to collect some data around it, and you come up with a particular model, you come up with a particular theory, let's assume. Now here, from a specific aspect, you are reaching to that particular higher level of formulation of the theory itself. Now this particular process, in this particular journey, what you have done, you have simply gone through from a specific to the general aspect, where later on if somebody wanted to take your model, that person can take your model for their study, for the further analysis or further understanding of that particular phenomena, whatever they are understanding. Now this is the inductive approach. What is a deductive approach? So the deductive approach simply is that once you got some theory, let's assume there is a theory like theory of planned behavior, theory of reasoned action, or some other theory, Harvard State model, whatever theory you talk about. You take the theory, and with the help of that particular theory, you try and explain the phenomena that you are facing right now. Or what are the other approaches to, so these are the two approaches that I have talked about. One is the inductive approach, one is the deductive approach. These are basic approaches to the research problem itself. The second is, you also need to define research questions. So what are the broader questions that the research, this particular research, is going to address? After the research question, you also need to develop some objectives of the research itself. And after the objective, you also need to find out what are the different hypotheses. So please try and understand the difference between the two. The objectives, when we talk about, that simply illustrates that what we are trying to achieve, what is the object that the research is having. And the hypothesis simply means is a tentative solution to those objectives that we have framed in our research itself. Let's come to this third one, the step number 3. There we are talking about the research design. So as I mentioned, it is simply a script. If you remember the word script in this particular slide, that will suffice the purpose. And what is that script? The script simply means, are you going to follow the exploratory research design? Are you going to follow the descriptive research design? Are you going to follow the causal research design, experimental research design? So you need to decide as to which particular research design you are going into. Let's assume, let's take some example of the exploration, where the no review is available. Let's say you went into the literature to find out your research topic, and the review is not available. And if the review is not available, that means the complete picture is in exploration form. You need to explore things. Nothing is available in that sense. Ideally, it is not possible, but yes, that's the theory that we need to understand. The second one is the descriptive one. There we have two options. One is the cross-sectional, another one is the longitudinal. Longitudinal having a time element into it, and the cross-sectional simply means in a one go when we collect the data from the respondents. So causal research and then experimentation. So these are the various research design formulations that we are having, based on which we proceed to the next level, that is step number 4. There we talk about the field work and the data collection. Now please try and understand, when we talk about the field work work and the data collection, before that in the research design itself, there also we try and understand what kind of a sampling that we are going to take, what kind of a method that we are going to approach to the data collection itself. Let's assume you want to go for the primary data, you want to go for the secondary data. So you need to decide which particular data collection method you are going to work with. The another most important part in the data collection process is the moment you select a person for the data collection, you have to very much be clear with what are the methods you are going to follow in terms of for the data collection itself. Let's assume you are going for an offline method, you are going for an online method. So which particular method you are going to take, and please be careful when you are selecting persons for this particular process. You also need to understand the person must be familiar with that particular topic itself or not. Let's assume you are going for a social media platforms to collect the data. So the person responsible for collection of the data through the social media platform must be acquainted with those particular platforms itself in order to take the data from them. Let's say, for example, email marketing, the email data collection, or internet data collection through the internet, or by phone, or by personal interviews. So these are the various ways by which we actually collect the data from the respondents. The next step comes in the data preparation and the analysis. The data preparation simply means, because once you collect the data from the respondents, it is not in good form to actually directly go for the analysis. You need to clean the data first. So for the cleaning of the data, what you need to do is just put up in the Excel file, you apply certain tools and techniques in order to understand whether there is some unengaged responses or there is some missing responses, there is some coding errors. So all these things you try and figure it out in that particular process, and then you finally prepare a data for the final analysis itself. Within this particular process, when the data is finalized to be analyzed, now you need to understand the tools and techniques that you have selected. Let's assume you have selected for regression, you have selected for t-test, you have selected for ANOVA, MANCOVA, structural modeling, ISM, whatever tools and technique you have selected, you need to apply that. Then further, you also need to write down the findings of that particular study itself. Then step number 6, which is a final step in the marketing research process itself, that simply says that you just follow the template of the report. Just there are various templates available for the report writing. Just follow the template. Write down from the very beginning, but try to have address throughout the research process. Well, let's assume you are talking about the introduction section of the report preparation, or you're talking about the let's say conclusion section of the report preparation itself. Now within that particular section, whether it is introduction or it is a conclusion, always try to address the research problem. The agenda for the report preparation is to addressing the research problem itself, because there the readers are interested into. There your management is interested into. Your management is not interested in some other gray area where you deviate the management with your fancy words, with your fancy findings and all. Management is simply trying to understand that this was the research problem. Now what is the solution that has come up out of this particular research itself? In addition to this, the findings should be comprehensible to the management for their decision making. So straight away when we write the findings, at the same time in the next section when we write the implication section, we should always be careful that implications that we are writing should be addressed to the research problem, and we should be able to try and understand that we should be able to match the two. And finally, not only report will suffice the purpose. There has to be one oral presentation to the management, because management may not understand some research jargons and all. They have to be simplified. The researchers has to simplify the process for the management in order to make them understand that what this research is, what was the problem, where we started, this was the script that we followed, the research design I'm specifically talking about, and finally we are able to make this happen, and this is the complete report, the complete picture of the presentation itself. So that's all from my side. I hope you enjoyed the learning. Thank you so much.